I have 50 tips and tricks for controller players that apply to both console and PC, so let's get right into the video. Okay, so first and foremost, one of the best things you can do to increase your potential in this game and even other games is to learn claw. I know that it's not an ideal way to hold your controller, but it does allow you to press a lot more buttons if you don't play with paddles. If you aren't willing to do this, don't worry, you don't have to, and there are still 49 tips left. One thing I really want to stress is that if you game a decent amount, you should get into the habit of stretching your fingers and wrists to prevent future injury or pain, because you don't want to end up trying to fix that problem once it's happened. It's important to have a fairly low dead zone because the way the controller works is that, let's say you're looking to the right, but then you want to look left. You have to move your joystick to the left back over the center axis in order for your camera to actually look left, whereas a keyboard player doesn't have to worry about this problem. Because controller operates this way, it's even more important to try and make input delay as little of a factor as possible. So some settings that you can turn off to help with this are subtitles, replays, energy saving, and the foot controller. Expanding on this topic of delay, PS5 controller has least amount of delay, with the PS4 being second and the Xbox controllers being the worst for delay. Skins, pickaxes, and wraps that have animations also give a bit of delay, so doing things like wearing the crystal skin and using a solid color wrap will give you less delay because there's no animation that the game has to load. Now this may seem dumb, but I strongly believe you should put a little bit of time into aim training on controller. This is going to help improve your thumb control, which is not only going to improve your aim, but your crosshair placement as well. You also want to make sure that you don't grip your controller too hard while you play, because in doing so you sacrifice some control over your joysticks, which makes you a choppier player, so try to be nice and relaxed. Items like control freaks and trigger stoppers give you a bit of an advantage if you're looking to buy some add-ons for your controller. You can also buy grip, but if your hands get sweaty while you play, that thing is going to stink after a bit of use. Getting back into optimization, you want to make sure you plug your controller cable into a port in the back of your PC and not by the power button. Your NVIDIA settings are also extremely important, so here are the settings I use for the best performance possible. Discord can also be optimized by turning hardware acceleration off and turning the name displays off. Generic layout also has the least amount of delay, but it does slightly worsen your aim assist strength, which brings me to my next point. Any program you use to get less delay like anti-micro, timer resolution, and even overclocking your controller is going to decrease your aim assist strength, so keep that in mind if that is something you're looking into. Okay, I apologize for all of the optimization talk, now I'll shift the focus back to controller itself. It's extremely important that you take advantage of the good buttons that you have, which are your left stick and your right stick, and potentially the touchpad if you use a PlayStation controller and can comfortably press that. How you set up your binds depends entirely on which controller you use and whether or not you play claw or with paddles, but your two most important binds are switch mode and edit. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have in the comments if you want a more personalized response to your situation. It's no surprise the biggest disadvantage on controller is mechanics. You guys have to be working on your crosshair placement to speed up mechanics by not taking as long to do an edit. I have a whole video on this if you want a more in-depth explanation. This will also help to avoid getting pre-fired, because if you're trying to piece your opponent, but you finish an edit with sloppy crosshair placement, a good player is going to pre-fire you before you can place that next build. Getting your edit timing down is also very important, so I found this map that lets you do that. If you really want, you can switch the region you play creative on to be on higher ping to try and replicate your in-game ping for more realistic practice. One thing I don't see enough people talking about is the necessity of practicing resets on controller. We don't have the fancy scroll wheel reset like keyboard, so it's worth putting the time into resetting builds and learning where you have to flick your crosshair in order to reset certain edits. It's also significantly harder to reset edits on walls or builds that you can't see because you have to pull your map out first and then reset. So make sure to incorporate this type of practice into your routine as well, because it is a slightly different muscle memory that you have to build. Also, I know it may be tempting, but don't use the insta reset option because it doesn't allow you to re-edit edited builds, which does come in handy a fair bit. I personally find it easiest to have your reset bound to the left trigger, but if you've already established a solid muscle memory with another bind, then keep it as is. Being on controller, you most of the time have better aim than someone equal skill as you who's on keyboard. So mechanics should be what you grind the most until it's not the thing that holds back anymore. Learning new free builds and pushing your free building capability to its limit is one of the best and fastest ways to improve your mechanics. PGs primarily focus on training your raw mechanics, just make sure you're playing someone of equal skill or better. Playing Zone Wars more so helps your in-game mechanics because you're limited on mats, so it forces you to learn mat conservation so you can't just spam your builds. Reels are the closest thing you're going to get in creative to in-game fighting, just keep in mind that there are no third parties in this unless you're playing with multiple friends. So far I've mentioned big disadvantages, but a big advantage you have on controller is the movement. Because of the 360 movement, you can move your character in any direction you want, making 50-50s more favorable for you with the correct movement. 360 movement also makes phasing into people's boxes much easier, so take advantage of that. Even pros sometimes don't expect you to walk through their wall first try, so this can be a great way to end a fight quickly. If you struggle phasing in through people's build, this map will hold walls for you, that way you can always practice your timing and you don't need a friend. The final thing 360 movement does for you is it makes tack sprinting better. Tack sprinting is such a good way to catch your opponent off guard because even though it's been in the game for a while now, how fast you run throws people off in fights and you can often sneak a hefty pump shot on your opponent. If you struggle with that long range aim, sometimes moving your left stick to make micro adjustments is better than trying to make those micro adjustments with your right stick due to the lack of aim assist from range. Aim is a huge part of the game, so be confident in it. Like I previously mentioned, a lot of the time you're already going to have better aim than keyboard players, so you can't be scared you're going to miss a shot. If you struggle to figure out what look input you should play on, I can tell you that a majority of you should play on linear. Most pros are linear, as well as most controller players in general. This is the best look input for your mechanics as well as crosshair placement. Expo isn't as great for mechanics and crosshair placement, however where it does excel is aim. That AR tracking is much better due to the exponential look input. Finally, a third option many people don't know about is the non-advanced setting. You can choose to turn off advanced settings, which has you go back to how controller aiming used to be in Fortnite back in the day. I played the setting for a really long time, and I will say that for most players, and I mean like 98% of you guys, probably shouldn't play this. I liked it because my shotgun aim felt really nice, and I would hit a lot of hefty pumps, but it is very choppy, making most other aspects of the game fairly more difficult. A little trick I've seen some players do is, if they prefer linear for their mechanics and non-ADS aiming, but they really like the ADS aim of linear, they play linear and turn on ADS boost to like 3% to give them more of an expo feel while ADSing. I personally haven't tried this, so test it out yourself and see if it actually works for you. When choosing your sense, looking at some pros' senses is a good option to use as an understanding to what you should be playing, but I wouldn't recommend copying their sense exactly because everyone has different ping, input delay, and you might be on console while they're on a super good PC, so everyone's game is going to feel a little different. A common misconception I see players have is with the concept of 50-50s. If an opponent is spraying out of his box, and then they reset that wall leaving it momentarily one shot to a pickaxe, if you need that refresh, just jump in the box. If they don't know you're trying to jump in, it really isn't a 50-50 anymore because you're going to get that first shot, and a lot of the time they try to escape instead of committing to an aim duel, which often ends up as a free elimination for you. It's easier to play aggressive on controller than it is to play defensive, due to the fact that when you box up and play defensive, it's more intensive on your box fighting mechanics, which are harder on controller than keyboard. Don't try to have a keyboard or mouse playstyle. This is different from learning from keyboard players. You can obviously do that and learn certain moves from them, but don't replicate their playstyle. Watch pros like Reet, Marrow, Moneymaker, and really just anyone better than you because chances are you will learn a lot from doing so. Just to be clear, still watch keyboard pros like Booga, Cooper, and Kanata and learn from their decision making. Just make sure you differentiate what you are trying to learn by watching certain pros. Don't blame your lack of skill on your input. I know it's frustrating playing against zero ping keyboard players, but there's always something you could have done differently to put yourself in a better position to win the fight. You don't get any aim assist in bushes. Don't let this discourage you from bush camping. Just account for that when you go for a beam from one. When assigning your weapons, your shotgun should always be in your first slot so you can instantly switch to it at all times. Also, when you build and want to switch to your shotgun, press your switch mode again instead of pressing pickaxe and then cycling to your shotgun. This may seem obvious, but I've seen a good amount of players do this. Your spray weapon should always be next to your shotgun. Whether that's in the second slot or the fifth slot, it's all just preference. Little off topic, but clean your controller occasionally to avoid future problems because some joystick problems are caused by gunk and dust at the base of the joystick. It's best to hold your builds out while reviving a teammate in order to avoid accidentally picking them up and throwing them if someone sprays your wall mid-revive. And finally, tip number 50 is controller isn't a mindset. Don't use it as an excuse to play brain dead because your decision making is a huge part of this game and you should always be learning and trying to become a smarter player. That's all I got for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.